Move on to our item 6.7, consideration of update by the Public Works Director on the status of the 5-year pavement rehabilitation plan, and B, direction to staff for next steps in completing the plan. And with this, we have Public Works Director Scott DeLeon here with us, and he'll go ahead. I'll give the reins to him so he can move forward and give us a wonderful presentation on these roads.
Wow, wonderful. Okay, you set the bar for me. I'm just going to get started. We'll start with just this. Despite the appearance to the contrary, Supervisor Sabate and I did not call each other this morning and coordinate, but just want to get okay. Moving on. I'll tell you, I made a comment to one of my coworkers today that, you know, I make a lot of presentations to the board, and I got to thinking about this one as I was waiting for my turn, and this is perhaps the most important presentation I've made to this board or any boards in my career as the Public Works Director, and I'm excited to be here. This is certainly something that's a long time coming, and I hope it. My goal is that it begins a step towards change, and some of the things you're going to get from this is this is going to be pretty expensive and proposition. We're going to do our best to accommodate all of this, and I think it's important to give you a little bit of history. You know, the Public Works Department maintains over 600 miles of road, a couple hundred bridges and thousands of culverts, and historically we've been reactionary. We patch potholes, we respond to safety concerns, and when funding becomes available, we do pavement preservation projects or we do capital improvement projects. And again, a lot of those are grant driven, simply because the discretionary funding that we have, that we get through the gasoline tax is limited, and by the time you get done paying for all of the equipment and labor and materials and everything, we don't have a lot of money to do large-scale pavement projects. With SB1, we have seen an increase in that, and I know that's not a very popular topic, especially right now, but the bottom line is the department is receiving additional funding, and I really felt that it was time to start looking ahead and being less reactionary and start planning for the future. And so I came to your board last year, October-ish, and asked you to approve a contract with NCE Consulting Engineers. They are the preeminent pavement management firm in the state of California. They do our pavement management updates every couple of years, along with the city of Lakeport and the city of Clear Lake. And they do most of the cities and counties in the state of California. So they have a lot of history here in Lake County, and certainly a lot of experience and history with communities like ours all over the state. What they've done here is they put together a 5-year plan, and initially we had a target of a pavement condition index, and I'm going to shorten that to PCI. We had a PCI target of 70 in 5 years, and recognizing that that was going to be extremely ambitious, NCE went about looking at that as the goal. They did not get too far into their study when they called and said, you know, we really don't think that 70 in 5 years is financially attainable. They estimated the need at about $174 million to reach 70 in 5 years, and that's just not really an option. So what we did is we lowered the target to 50, which is still good, certainly better than where we're at right now, which is hovering in the mid-30s. And the objective was to create a plan that we could develop projects for the future. One of the goals of this effort is, and it's kind of a two-prong approach, and it's something that will be coming to your board in the near future, and that is the development. I want to hire a consultant to develop plans and specs using this list to begin putting those plans and specs together for construction projects, so that we are, number one, can start the preliminary environmental work on those projects, and then also, number two, if funding sources become available, we'd be in a place to be able to jump on that and put projects out to bid. The plan that you see before you has estimates, and then the map shows projects per year. The Public Works Department is, and I'm going to get to funding here in a minute, but the Public Works Department is, we're very close to being able to handle the first year of this plan with some reserves that we've developed over the last couple of years, and kind of saving our SB1 funds, and so we're going to be pretty close to being able to fund year one. Although several of the projects that are identified in year two, we're actually performing with our local crews this summer. So some of the projects in the Clear Lake, Sulphur Bank area, New Long Valley Road, we're repairing those, and in fact, I have an item later today that we're going to talk about those. Some of the characteristics, or some of the considerations the NCE used when establishing this list is they wanted to group neighborhoods and treatment types together. The other thing that they did is they allocated, roughly allocated 50% of the available funding for local streets and roads, and then the other 50% to arterials. Typically, with the limited funds that we have, we focus on arterials and major collectors. And this effort, as I directed, was to include a lot of our local streets and roads. So when you see little clusters of color there, those are our communities. And you know, if you look at if you look up here in Nice and Lucerne, and we can go through these slides here in a minute. You know, these are they're community focused. So that was something that we wanted to do. The other thing that they did is they included roads that have a PCI of less than 25, which basically the roads failed. Historically, we have not done that. We've just said, well, the roads failed, and we're going to focus on other roads, and we've changed that approach, and we included roads that had the PCI of less than 25. So I'll just briefly go through a couple of these slides, kind of focus on the first year. I should note that there are a number of roads in this plan that don't see a lot of traffic. We're going to probably swap a few of these out and replace them with roads that have a higher average daily traffic. And okay, so how would I go to the next slide?
Matthew, next slide. There we go.
Perfect.
Sorry, set it up.
Magic.
All right, so this would be the plan for 2023. You can see it's predominantly in the North Shore. The color codes, and I apologize that we're trying to get a lot of information on a slide, and the color codes off on the far left indicate the types of projects. You have double chip seal, full depth reclamation with double chip seal, mill and fill with an AC overlay, and then reconstruct the AC surface. And then I think the last one there says single chip seal. We're stretching the limits of my eyesight here, just so if I got something wrong, holler. Some of these projects we're going to try to do in-house. The double chip seal are certainly things that we can do. Some of the full depth reclamation with chip seal projects we would probably try to tackle in-house. And then the projects that require paving and full depth reclamation would be projects that we would put out to bid. So you can see very ambitious for the next year with both Lucerne and Nice being tackled in that particular year. These are all dependent on, there's a lot of things that go into this. This is our plan, but there's a lot of things that go into this. For example, we will immediately need to get a hold of the utility companies that have water lines and sewer lines in these roads and make them aware that we have a plan to rebuild these roads, and if they have any repairs or any major projects that they need to do, they need to get them done, because once those roads are reconstructed and repaved, we're not going to be issuing any encroachment permits or trenching permits in them for 5 years. So you know, we don't know, and frankly have not been able or not had a chance to reach out to those utilities yet, but we will. And again, this is our goal for year 2023. Matthew, maybe the next slide. And the next series of slides are just kind of a closer in view of this would be the town of Upper Lake. And you can see there's some roads out in the Rancheria that, you know, the average daily traffic for that road is pretty small. We would do some work there, but I'm not sure we would do all of the things that they're planning on doing there. I think they are calling for full depth reclamation and chip seal. We might you know, I know we have some issues in the community of Nice, for example, on Lakeshore. That road is in pretty bad shape and gets a lot more traffic. So we may be moving some projects around, but again, in general, this is the type of work that we would be doing. Matthew, next slide, please. Close up of the community of Lucerne. You're seeing quite a few of the roads there, and a pretty broad.
It's Nice.
Nice. Yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry. That's Nice. Thank you. Pretty broad types of projects, from full depth reclamation and repaving to some single chip seal. So again, some of the chip seal stuff we would likely do where roads are being repaved would be projects we'd put out to bid. And next slide, please. There's Lucerne. And again, a lot of the roads off of Highway 20 slated for repair. I know we have a lot of utility crossings on that road. Currently, they act as traffic calming and speed reduction, but we're going to need to work with our utility partners to make sure that they're prepared and their utilities are all in shape before we can go in there and rebuild those roads. I didn't plan on going through every slide of the draft plan. Again, there's some things that we're going to juggle, and we're going to work with the consultant to modify. I wanted to give you just kind of a high-level overview and just look at the first year that we're planning, and then answer any questions. I know funding, and perhaps we can get to that in a second, but perhaps now if you had any questions with regard to how the maps were developed, how the projects were chosen, I'll be happy to try to answer any of those. Again, the consultant focused on communities and lumping communities together, and repair types. So the strategies for the roads and how they're going to be repaired were a couple of the objectives on their strategy. So Anybody have any particular questions?
Supervisor Sabatier?
Yes, thank you so much for the 5-year plan. I know that, I believe we've had conversations, I'm not sure if those were private or if they were part of a committee, but we had talked about Cobb at one point. And I see if I'm trying to bring it up, I apologize, I don't have it right on my computer, but I believe Cobb looked like it was either year 4 or year 5. And due to the fact that Cobb has been, I'm sure that Supervisor Pyska could speak better to it, has been the longest standing after the fire disaster that has not necessarily seen a reclamation of their roads. Wondering if that might be able to be maneuvered so that it's not year 5 and that we can get that a little bit more up front. But I'm sure that I've triggered something for Supervisor Pyska to say.
So later today, I have another item where we're going to talk about funding, and one of my objectives is to get some plans and specifications developed for the reconstruction of the roads on Cobb, and having those plans and specs in place is going to be, it's going to have a number of positive effects. Number one, we can get the environmental work started. We can be ready to go with those plans if a funding source becomes available. We can absolutely move things around with respect to the timing. And this is a draft, and we can certainly work with the consultant to move some things around. But I agree with you, and I understand that, and with respect to the roads on Cobb being the longest damaged roads as a result of the Valley Fire, and which is why I really would like to get a consultant on board to get those plans and specs put together for the reconstruction of those roads.
Supervisor Pyska?
Yeah, and actually a lot of the burned roads aren't on the map. Some of them are, but a lot of them aren't. And so that was obviously one of my questions to Scott earlier this week or yesterday. So that'll be covered on the next agenda item. But I do appreciate that Bottle Rock Road is put in year 3. That wasn't an old road before the fire, and it got thoroughly abused. So that is an arterial road, an important arterial road. So I appreciate that that is moved up. And I know my friends in the Rivieras are going to be delighted to know that they're in year 3, I think, because that's, we get a lot of complaints from that area. So happy to see that. Some of the questions I also asked you earlier, let's see, we all know the cost of oil and other construction costs is fluctuating, and just we have to be mindful that these construction costs could change and spike. And so, what was your answer for me on that?
Well, I don't recall my specific answer, but those are factors that we deal with every construction season, and the issue that we all are going to face here, and we're going to probably start talking about funding here pretty soon, is there's only so many funds to go around, and it's going to be a challenge, especially if construction costs escalate. The consultant has built in some escalation of costs. They've used current bid numbers from the city of Clear Lake. They were gracious enough to share all of their construction costs with us on some of their recent projects. So they're using some fairly current data, but things can change. And this is a plan. This is what we'd like to do. This is what we plan to do. But utility conflicts, potential environmental conflicts, costs increases, things of that nature are things that are frankly out of our control. We'll do the best we can.
Yeah.
And if we have to scale down projects, or one option is to extend this. Instead of 5 years, it's a 10-year plan. That's something that needs to happen. Then then that's, I mean, we'd only do so much with the funding, which is frustrating because now we finally have a plan to do something. But I think this is, again, I think this is a great step forward.
Yeah. And then you mentioned utilities, and we're hearing from PG&E about undergrounding projects. And I know that's new, and this plan is new, and so there's some coordination that's going to have to happen there.
Yes, and we've had a couple of meetings already with PG&E, and the last meeting we had, their plans are still new. They're still trying to figure out what they're going to do, and so we didn't have this plan. We didn't have the draft, so we couldn't really share with them some of the things that we wanted to do, and vice versa, as they're still developing their stuff. So I think as we move forward, as they develop more information, as we can certainly share this plan with them and say this is, you know, this is where things are headed. We've asked them to please work with us. I don't want to get in a situation where we've rebuilt a road and now they want to do and the project they want to do is a very worthwhile project, but I don't want to get into that situation. I really want to try to coordinate and work those things out and get those things done, get those undergrounding projects done first.
Yeah, and collaborating and coordinating is so much easier when both sides have a set of plans, and we can move, shift things around if we have to make sure that we're not going to get into a situation where we regret. But then there's also the potential of the full circle work, and I know that this is year 3 and 4 in that area, and we're looking at our feasibility study now for full circle, and if we're looking at a 5-year moratorium on that pavement, there could be some potential issues there, but you had some thoughts?
I did. I had some thoughts on that. You know, in the design of the full circle project, if they could utilize the shoulder and not be in the pavement, that could work. And then any crossings, they could directionally bore those instead of digging across the road. So there are some construction techniques that they could use to either eliminate or certainly minimize impacts to the pavement. Alternatively, you know, if that's going to be a big project, and it's going to be an expensive project, and they could just plan on doing pavement rehabilitation when they're done, and they could factor that into the cost of the project. And any roads that had been rebuilt, if they needed to get into those, they could just plan on rebuilding that.
Yeah, those are my questions.
Thank you. Supervisor Simon?
Yeah, you know, obviously, you know, having a vision is always the most important thing. So, you know, appreciate the working through the whole process, the 170 million, but at least you get to focus on it. So when we're going in, we're working as, you know, our federal partners, state partners, hey, here's our budget, this is what we're looking to do over the next few years. So that helps us out big time, at least in the conversation aspect of things. Obviously, South County, District 1, you know, Valley Fire, you know, tore through there too, you know, destroyed basically the entire community of Anderson Springs, burned all through Middletown, hundreds of homes, you know, and the roads are in well, you guys are down there probably patching holes today, like you said, throughout the entire town. And then obviously Southtown, East Road, West Road, Hildebrand, all through there are in pretty bad shape. Probably in your levels is failed. You know, I was just on there yesterday, driving around, looking at them, just checking on some of the things. So, you know, just looking at those opportunities too, you know, as we go forward. Are going to jockey for position when things happen. I know you got projects. You did Harbin last year, the double chip seal, which really changed that environment down there on that road by the high school. So those are great projects to see. I'm glad we have the plan. And like I said, I won't push too hard, but South County, That's the first place you see when you come over the mountain from the Bay Area. We're the gateway. I know we got another name of gateway over here, but that's mostly people traveling through. If you're coming up over 29, over St. Helena, you're coming here because you want to come for a vacation or doing some certain things like that. And as soon as you get off that road, and right there by the RV park, you take a left into Old Maribel Road or anywhere like that, you immediately see that the roads are in really bad shape. So anyway, always focusing on that. I'm always coming from a marketing side. You know, you got to pull over to take a phone call or something there. You're going to be in a pretty bad place. And if you're thinking about moving here or starting a business here, that's kind of some of the first impressions we get. So, you know, always want to be thinking about that stuff. And a lot of work to do. But I'm glad we have a number, because we've sat and had many conversations how we get to that number. I think the initial conversation was 50 million. Obviously, it's way above that and almost triple or quadruple what you were thinking. So appreciate the conversations. We'll see how it works through here. And I know we have another item down the road that'll help us move things forward. So South County, obviously, could really use some help. And that includes Cobb, obviously, as we're up there. I was up there in your area looking at some other projects and other stuff, and yeah, in a real bad position. But as you said, the whole county's down around 30, so none more important than the other. At least something happening is a good plan, so thanks.
Yep. Supervisor Sabatier?
Yeah, two last comments, at least for this part of the conversation. We had brought a couple of years back, maybe 3 years back, a dig once policy. And I'd like to see, if we're going to be doing a whole lot of roads, I think we probably should review again a dig once policy to see if that's something that we want to do. That's to help ensure the protection of our roads so that we are getting that collaboration from our utility companies rather than them making a decision that they need to fix things and then we end up with potential issues. So I'd love to see if the board would be interested in revisiting that, and so we'll have that discussion later. The other one is, and I just spoke to you about this, I know that I've heard Supervisor Simon, and I'm sure that there's many others. I've heard from Fire Chief Cepeda, the need for safety for roads during fires where the egress and ingress is very limited. And I know that that just adds more dollar signs into the whole equation, but I'd love to look at a way to implement one road here or there from time to time. I know we can't do it annually or else that pretty much negates the entire projects that you're offering us, but I want to make sure that we also include the idea of fire safety into some of these plans and recognizing that if a fire is coming from a specific location, we have people who might be trapped and not be able to get out, and that creating, even if it's as simple as just an ingress rather than a full-bore road, at least providing another exit strategy. And I can't speak to it as much, but I know I've heard about it before, and it's a concern. And I don't know how it would be implemented into this plan, but it's just something I feel I need to mention because it's still an issue. We're still going to have fires, and I think part of infrastructure rebuild and maintenance is also to create a safety corridor for people to be able to utilize in order to get out of harrowing situations.
Ed, you know, certainly following the Valley Fire, you know, there was lots of discussion about Anderson Valley or Anderson Springs and you know, a road that's just one way in and one way out. There's a lot of communities like that. Riviera West is one that comes to mind. A lot of roads, a lot of homes up there, and they have one way in and one way out. So the strategy that I think I would recommend for that would be not so much as part of this effort, but parallel to it, to develop a plan. You have to have the plan. That's why I'm so excited about this, is now this gives us a visual, gives us a map of these are the things that we need to, where we need to be spending our money. Having a plan for those communities. Because you've got right-of-way acquisition, you've got a lot of issues, environmental and others, to develop those secondary means. But those types of projects, in my opinion, are perfect projects for hazard mitigation. And every time there's an emergency in this state, typically the state of California puts hazard mitigation funds available, makes hazard mitigation funds available. And you don't have to have the emergency in your county to be eligible for those funds. Though I think having a plan for some of these areas and having some preliminary plans and specs and some cost estimates and be working on rights of entry and or easements, whatever it's going to take, and having things ready to go so when a funding opportunity presents itself that you can throw your hat in the ring. I think that's going to be better than where we are right now. So that'd be my approach.
No, I appreciate that. I am unsure how to implement. I appreciate the option, and I think that might be a good way to go, but it's just something I want to make sure that we continue to see. And I know we can't make all roads be 4290 road safe, as Chief Cepeda would probably appreciate seeing, but I think the more that we can slowly chip away at that, from the fact that all this was built 100 years ago, 50 years ago, without these rules and regulations, but we're living in a different time right now.
Right.
And my last thing, and I apologize, I said that already, but my last thing is I'd love to make sure that we have when we formalize this plan, to say that at the fourth year, between the third and fourth year, that we go ahead and review and make sure we have another 5-year plan set to go and ready to go for continuity purposes.
Okay. I don't think NCE would be opposed to that, and I think that's a good idea. It'd be a good time to review what we have accomplished, and then start setting out a plan for the next 5 years. I completely agree with that.
And I'm thinking of it from an investor perspective. If you can see that the plans have already been done, if we only have 1 year left, that's not enough predictability for investors. But if we have another 5-year plan, then that's very much predictability for investors to see that you have accomplished these things and now you have another 5 years ahead.
Okay. Just taking a couple of notes. Thanks. I think talking about funding, as I mentioned, the road department's been setting aside some funds and reserves in anticipation of needing a sizable amount of money for a big project. And so that 2023 project and the $15 million, we're going to be real close to having the available funding to put that project together. It's the years after that are going to be the challenge. And so we've got a little time to try to figure out how we're going to do that, but we are estimating that the road department will have approximately $5 million of discretionary funding that we can put towards projects. As you saw on the map, our projects per year are in the 15 to 17 million. So we've got a shortfall there. We're going to need to find some other ways of funding and absolutely go after every grant that's available. Talked with some folks in admin and our auditor controller, and they're saying that there are some capital improvement type funding programs available, and so we're going to be working with them to see what's available, and if that $5 million a year is something that we could be leveraging to pay back and pay back a loan, for example. That's in order to get a big chunk of money up front to do several years of projects. That's an option, and we'll certainly be looking at that. I promised I wouldn't lead with this one, but I'm going to bring up a potential sales tax increase. The county has some room. And I asked for some numbers from Patrick, and he gave me some numbers based on local sales tax over the years and what a projected half-cent sales tax would generate. And based on the numbers that he gave me, a half-cent sales tax could generate as much as $2 million. So that would be additional that could go to the road projects. We've worked with our friends at APC to do outreach and polling and different things of that nature for these types of projects. City of Clear Lake was very successful in doing that outreach and that polling in their recent sales tax increases for roads. So that's something that we can certainly come back and talk about, but it is an option. Again, I didn't want to lead with it, but I think it's something that merits some discussion. And then I mentioned it already once, and that was increasing the time frame of the projects and moving them from, and I'll pick an easy number for ease of math. Instead of a 5-year, it's a 10-year. So instead of $15 million a year, it's 7.5. Well, that's a little more palatable when you. If we were to perhaps do a half-cent sales tax and then use the money that the discretionary funding that we have in the road department, now you're in the ballpark of being able to do a series of projects for the next 10 years. So those are some options we're looking at. Didn't expect any answers or anything today. I just really wanted to get this draft plan in front of you. Take your comments and your concerns and keep moving forward. So with that, I'll be happy to answer any other questions.
No, I just think all those strategies you talked about, I know we had a presentation from, I think it was a California bank or someone here a couple years ago, from CSAC. They came and sat right here and talked about big projects, borrowing up to $25 million. Really like the idea we're going to be talking about leveraging that $5 million on payments back to that. Also, too, I think the other thing which we just experienced here just last week was getting projects in that can be done in 1 year. This plan will now have, for the federal earmarks, we'll have projects. We can say, hey, we got $3 million worth of paving that we're going to do next year. Here it is. Hopefully we can throw that on top of it. And we didn't have the plans. Now we're going to have the plans, which will really help us out, like I said, as we move forward. So, we're talking the right language. I'll be happy when we see the first projects rolling out in the next year. That'll be the main thing. I know we're doing what we can, but once again, you got to have the plan. And to follow up on the feasibility study plan for ingress and egress, it does need to tie to this eventually as we move forward. But I know there's going to be other opportunities coming down the pipe through conversations with the Risk Reduction Authority and everything else that's happening, Scott. So we'll continue those conversations.
Right.
All right. Thank you for the presentation. I really I like the plan moving forward. I do agree with Supervisor Simon about. One thing that I'll add is just noticing that some of the differentiations in the projects when you looked further into what projects took. So, for example, some of them are going to need a more, it'll take longer to get done, and it might have to be delayed. Where the other ones that your department can handle, those will obviously be handled, and maybe some of the others can be done in the other districts to fill or something of that nature. So we get more done, and also. In some instances, hitting the points that some of the other supervisors made. I, of course, appreciate that a lot of my districts in the first phase. I'm not going to deny that. A lot of the, that's why I'm not going to try to talk too much to change the direction of that. But at the same time, I do understand if I was at the other side of it, I would be like, in all of our constituents, call us about our roads. All of our constituents feel as if they've been neglected longer than the other and whatnot. So, I mean, I'm not, I don't want to belabor that, but I just wanted to note that either way, having a plan in as long as we hit those marks and have an explanation of why we didn't hit a specific mark so that we can tell our constituents why something didn't happen, I think we're going to be in a good mode. And then also, like you said, finding other opportunities to fund it if we can, so. Supervisor Tues.
Yeah, I'm just curious, what are our next steps? Are we in the future agenda going to have the formal plan coming back to us that we approve through resolution, or what's the process? I'm just curious as to where we go.
Hadn't really planned on a formal adoption of the plan, but I can certainly do that. Be honest with you, it's the first time we've ever done one, so I'm not sure I have a specific answer for you here. It's but if the adoption of that plan would be beneficial, I'd be happy to bring that back, and we'll have the consultant make a few adjustments, and then we'll bring that back. The next step for me personally is I've got to get a consultant on board to start working on design. 2023 is going to be here before we know it, and I need to get these projects out to bid, and so I got to have plans, and so that's a real high priority for me, and but I can certainly bring that back.
Ms. Grant and then Supervisor Pyska.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I was just going to suggest that if you bring it back for board action, you might want to ask staff to prepare a resolution so they can lay out the circumstances, and then your board can formally approve the plan via the resolution.
Thank you. Supervisor Pyska, go ahead.
But with the understanding that there's got to be some flexibility.
Yeah.
And then just making this plan public so that when we have complaints, we can forward a link to the constituents. They can see where the priorities are and where they are and how much longer they have to wait.
Patience.
All right. And I'll open it up for the public because I haven't done so yet. I see no one in the chambers, and so I'm looking on Zoom to see if there's any hands raised, and do not see any, so I will bring it back to the board. And it says just giving direction to staff for next steps in completing the plan. And so.
Sounds like we've done that.
Right, we've done that, right?
Yep.
All right.
And just a quick question. Yes. I know that I heard from Supervisor Pyska. I wasn't looking to my left. Do we all agree to a resolution coming back to us? I think it holds us a little bit more accountable to try and make us try to reach those goals. Granted, the flexibility has to be there. There's so many potential things that can happen, but I like the idea of formalizing it, making it very public, and doing the best we can to make sure that we get there.
And Mr. Chair, I was just going to say the resolution can certainly speak to the need for flexibility in those circumstances, so it won't be limiting. It should be helpful.
All right.
All right.
Completely. Thank you for that suggestion, Eddie. That's great.
And so with that, we'll go ahead and close this item and take up actually 7.2. That way we can just move right into. 7.5. Oh, I'm sorry.
7.5.
Oh, yeah, that'd be great.
Dyslexia was kicking in, sorry. 7.5.
And then we'll have 6.8 after that, Mr. Chair. I'll just make sure people are ready to roll if
Thank you.
that is your preference.
So 7.5 is a consideration of use of PG&E settlement funds for various road projects, and authorize the Public Works Department to include appropriations in the FY 22-23 budget. And this is also, we'll give the floor to you too.
Thank you. Yes, in October of 2020, your board conducted a series of discussions about, or a discussion about the use of PG&E settlement funds. And there were a number of projects, number of ideas, a number of things, and I took away a couple of projects to do, and I've been planning on them, and we were preparing our budget and kind of planning on these revenues, and it was suggested by the administrative office that perhaps we need to come back to your board and get some specifics and get your board to concur with those expenditures, and so the two projects that we planned on using a portion of the PG&E settlement funds. One was the pavement rehabilitation for roads that were affected by that sulfur fire, which include Lakeshore, North Drive, Sulphur Bank Drive in the Clear Lake area, Clear Lake Park area, and then out to Clear Lake Oaks there on Sulphur Bank. Crews have been working most of the winter on vegetation removal, culvert repairs, and getting the prep work done, dig outs, asphalt placement, different things. in anticipation of a double chip seal project on all those roads. We were hoping to use $1 million of the portion of that PG&E settlement for that project. We're going to be using that money on materials and equipment, and the road department will be paying for the labor for all the work associated with that. We're going to be doing that within in-house forces. So that was the first project. The second project, we talked about this a little bit ago, was the hiring of a consultant to prepare plans and specs for the reconstruction of the roads on Cobb Mountain. And we're actually hoping to work with the city of Clear Lake. They have a project out, or a request for quotes, or request for proposals, or request for qualifications out right now for consultants to prepare plans and specs for road projects. And we're hoping to kind of piggyback on their process, and they're going to establish a list of qualified consultants, and we're planning on utilizing that to select a consultant to do that work. So we're estimating $400,000 for that project. So the total amount of the PG&E settlement funds was $1.4 million. Again, $1 million going to the road rehabilitation and $400,000 to the design of roads on Cobb. And I think that keeps me within the target amount that your board had hoped to spend on road projects. That was my recollection, that was the number we were shooting for, was 1.4.
And I just wanted to say, I believe we got 3.5 total, and in our conversation that we had in our committee, we said let's try to utilize approximately half of it. So that's where that 1.4 million came from.
Okay.
Yeah, and I'm not exactly sure, the roads that I sent you yesterday, are they in, because I don't have the subdivision maps. So the Lakewood Pines, I think that's the Giffords Loop. And then I just wanted to make sure that
they're all in there.
Oh, they all are. Okay, great. Yep. I thought they were, but I want to make sure.
All right, I don't hear anything else from the board, so I will open it up for public input. Not seeing anyone on Zoom yet put their hand up, but I will wait and count down. Okay, looks like we don't have anyone from the public that want to comment on this, so I'll bring it back to the board for, is this just a report?
We need action on this.
For action, okay. So for action.
That we're spending it on what we didn't.
Mr. Chair, I move that we approve the use of PG&E settlement funds for various road projects as presented, and authorize Public Works Department to include appropriations for the projects in the fiscal year 2022-2023 budget.
Second.
So I have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. And so we are now finished with 7.5. Thank you, Director De Leon, for your presentations.
Thank you very much.
All right.